What if I told you that the reason your enemies acquired right now isn't because they've forgotten you, but because they're afraid of what's coming for them? What if I told you that every whisper, every lie, every moment they laughed at your faith and mocked your obedience has been recorded by heaven and payment is now due? This is not just another message. This is a spiritual alert. If you've been under attack lately, spiritually, emotionally, even socially, this message is for you. If you felt mocked, overlooked, disrespected, or betrayed, not by strangers, but by those who once walked beside you, sat at your table, smiled in your face, while stabbing you in the spirit, this word is your confirmation, because the Spirit of the Lord is moving, and He's moving with fire. You've been patient, you stayed quiet. While they lied, you stayed kind. While they laughed, you stayed faithful. Even when the warfare felt relentless in God, so it all, every sleepless night, every tear you refused to let others see, every spiritual attack dressed up as gossip, betrayal, or manipulation. And now heaven is responding. The ones who mocked you, who slandered your name, who disrespected your walk, and made light of your faith, they're about to witness the power of a living God, a God who does not take it lightly when His children are attacked, a God who defends, restores, and yes, makes enemies footstools beneath the feet of the faithful. This is not superstition. This is not karma in the worldly sense. This is divine justice. And if you've been crying out, asking, Lord, when the answer is now, right now, spiritual tables are turning. Heaven is preparing a table before you in the presence of those who once mocked you. You're stepping into a season where the very people who tried to destroy you will be witnesses to your elevation. Not because you fought back, not because He retaliated, but because you belong to God, and God always gets the final word. So if this message resonates deep in your spirit, if you know you've been wronged but chose to rise instead of retaliate, if you felt isolated, He had held firm in your faith, then this word is for you. Comment below with the words God, so it all let the enemy know your silence was never weakness. It was sacred warfare. And now the judge of heaven is rising to rule in your favor. Let's get into it. Because this isn't just a message, it's a warning, a confirmation, and a breakthrough, all wrapped in one. Your enemies are afraid of you. No, there's a different kind of silence around you lately. Not the kind that feels peaceful, but the kind that feels loud, eerie, like something spiritual has shifted. People who once used to talk nonstop about you are now silent. Those who used to mock you from the shadows won't even look in your direction. They act like they've forgotten you, but don't be deceived. They haven't forgotten you, they're watching you, but from a distance, and the reason they're quiet isn't because they've moved on. It's because they're scared. They're scared of what you carry now, scared of the way God is elevated you, scared of the favor that's starting to form around you. Like armor, because they're realizing something they didn't understand before. You are not just anyone, you are marked, set apart. You are walking with a kind of power they can't explain, the kind of protection they can't penetrate. You are always different. But now the difference is undeniable, and it's not just fear of you as a person, it's fear of what you represent. They're afraid because your life is convicting them without you even saying a word. The presence of God on you is exposing the darkness in them. Your joy reminds them of what they don't have. Your peace reminds them of the war they've created inside their own spirit. Your resilience, they tried to break it, and now it haunts them. They thought you would fall. They waited for your collapse. They predicted failure. In fact, some even prayed for it. They whispered curses disguised as concern. And now you're still standing stronger than before, glowing, covered. Favored, untouched, they thought they had power over you, but they never realized they were coming up against something far greater than your will. They were coming up against the will of God. And now the weight of that realization is crushing their pride. They're nervous, they're spiritually shaken. They can't sleep like they used to because in the middle of the night something is whispering to them. Something is telling them they messed with the wrong one. That maybe, just maybe, you really were chosen, that all the signs they laughed at were real, that all the times they called your faith a joke. They were mocking something sacred. There is a fear that only comes when someone realizes they have offended heaven. That fear is on them now. They can't unsee it. They can't unfeel it. And while you go about your life healing, growing, praying, moving in the grace of God, they are being tormented by their own actions. Not because you cursed them, not because you retaliated, but because the truth is now undeniable. They mocked you because they thought they were stronger than you. They believed your quietness meant weakness. But your silence was spiritual, it was sacred, it was divine discipline. And that discipline is now becoming a weapon in God's hand. They see it in your eyes. When they look at you, something different lives there. Now a fire, a stillness, a power. They used to joke about your calling, now they can't deny it. They used to roll their eyes at your annoying thing, now they're squinting through the consequences of dishonoring it. And here's the thing, they can't run from it. They can't shake it off. Every blessing that falls on you now reminds them of the hand of God. Every breakthrough you walk into convicts their soul. Every door that opens for you closes a door in their pride. And you haven't had to lift a single finger. That's why they're afraid, because if this is what happens when they mock one of God's chosen, what happens next? What happens when the God who watched you cry begins to reward you in public? What happens when the very one they mocked starts pouring blessings on the head they tried to shame? That fear, that uncertainty is just the beginning, because God is not just defending you, He is making a statement, He is turning the table, and the fear they feel now is just a whisper of the judgment coming next. Let them keep their distance. Let them whisper in guilt, because the same God they mock is now lifting you up right before their eyes. And that child of God is why your enemies are afraid of you. No, to you were their protection, now they're exposed. There are moments in life when the people around you don't even realize the spiritual covering they've been living under, because it wasn't theirs to begin with, it was yours. It was borrowed grace. It was mercy extended on your account. And they didn't recognize it. They took it for granted. They mocked the very presence that was protecting them because they didn't understand who you really were in the spirit. You see, when God marks someone, that mark doesn't just bless the individual, it often blesses the environment. Your presence in their life was keeping back things they couldn't see. You with the reason destruction didn't come sooner, you with the intercessor. They never acknowledged the shield they thought was their own strength. But it wasn't their strength, it was your obedience, your prayers, your humility, your covenant with God. And the moment you stepped away, the moment you stopped answering their calls, stopped praying for them in secret, stopped giving them access to your peace, the atmosphere shifted, the chaos crept in, the order collapsed. And now they don't know why everything is falling apart. They never realized you were their protection. While they were cursing you, you were covering them. While they were mocking you, you were standing in the gap. But now the gap is closed, and everything that was once being held back is being released. You weren't just a friend, you were a firewall. And now that the firewall is gone, they're exposed to the consequences of their choices. Exposed to the spiritual attacks they once tried to project onto you. Exposed to the same judgment they thought they were immune from because they were standing under your favor. And now that favor is no longer theirs to access, let that sink in. They mishandled the one person God had placed in their life to preserve them. They ridiculed the hand that was covering them, and now they're vulnerable, fragile, unprotected. That job they once flaunted, it's hanging by a thread. That relationship they chose over you, it's falling apart. That confidence they had in their own plans, it shattered because the grace they lived under wasn't theirs, it followed you. And this is where the fear begins to set in, not just because things are going wrong, but because deep down they know why. They know the moment everything started falling apart, it was the day you walked away, the day you cut that spiritual cord, the day you said no more. They feel the absence, they sense the shift, and now they're scrambling, trying to recreate what they never respected, trying to conjure peace in an atmosphere that only responded to your annoying thing. And it's not working because you weren't replaceable. You were a spiritual covering, a divine presence, a chosen vessel, and now that you're gone, they're being forced to stand alone in a war they were never equipped to fight. They're realizing something sobering you with the mercy of God in their life, not because you were perfect, not because you were above them, but because God trusted you enough to stand near them, to bring peace into places of confused, one to speak life into their brokenness, to carry light into their darkness. But instead of honoring that light, they tried to dim it. Instead of receiving your love, they abused your grace. And now they are exposed to the spiritual storms they used to be shielded from, exposed to the consequences of their pride, rebellion, and cruelty. Exposed to a spiritual battlefield where they have no armor, because their only covering was you, and you've walked away under dividus destruction. And here's the truth: you didn't walk away in bitterness, you walked away in obedience. You walked away when God whispered, "You've done your part, now let me do mine." And he's doing it, so don't be surprised when you start hearing that their life is unraveling. Don't be shocked when the same ones who once boasted in their arrogance are now facing breakdowns. Don't feel guilty when the same people who ridiculed your spiritual walk are now reaching out in quiet desperation, because what they're facing now is the reality of life without your covering. And what they're learning the hard way is that mocking God's anointed always comes at a price. God has seen and heard everything. They thought no one was watching. They thought their words, their laughter, their Asians thrown like daggers behind closed doors were hidden, buried beneath layers of pride and manipulation. They believed that if they could convince others you have the problem, they would win, that if they could laugh loudly enough, gossip long enough, or manipulate enough people into seeing you through their distorted lens, God would overlook it. But God doesn't blink, he doesn't miss a moment. Same God who was signed, and while you suffered was recording every second of it. He saw the smirks, he heard the snickers. He watched them twist your name, your character, your reputation. He watched them drag your heart through the mud while pretending to be the victim, and he stayed quiet, not because he approved, but because he was collecting evidence. He gave them time to repent, time to reflect, time to stop. But they didn't. They doubled down. They took pleasure in your pain. They made entertainment out of your suffering. They told stories with your name in their mouth like it was a punchline, forgetting that heaven weighs every idle word, and still God did, because that's who he is: merciful, patient, slow to anger. But patience is not permission, and silence is not surrender. It was never forgetfulness. It was divine strategy. God was allowing them to hang themselves with their own rope, not to destroy them, but to reveal them. And now everything they did in secret is being exposed. Every conversation is being uncovered. Every alliance formed to tear you down is being broken apart. The truth is no longer hiding, it's screaming. And it's not coming from your mouth. It's coming from heaven's judgment. Because God saw it all when you cried on your bedroom floor. He saw it. When you stayed silent while they lied about you, he heard it when you wrestled in your spirit wanting to fight back, but choosing to stand in love. He recorded that choice in his book, and now he is responding not with vengeance, but with righteous judgment. This is what happens when you leave room for God to be God. He doesn't come small. He doesn't come subtly. He comes in a way that everyone sees, and what he's doing now, wow, is making it known who his hand has been on all along. You weren't crazy. You weren't dramatic. He went to sensitive. You were chosen, and what they called weakness was actually restraint from the Holy Spirit. You knew the battle wasn't yours to fight. That's why you kept your head down. That's why you didn't clap back. That's why you prayed for them, even when it hurt, and heaven saw it now. They're the ones running. They're the ones scrambling, trying to undo what can't be undone, trying to erase words that were written in the spirit realm long ago. But it's too late, because what's been recorded can't be erased, not by manipulation, not by charm, not by playing the victim. They thought God wasn't listening. But every time they mocked you, they mocked him. Every time they dismissed your anointed, they challenged his authority. Every time they laughed at your faith, they provoked his justice. And now justice is here. You don't need to explain anymore. You don't need to defend yourself, because God is making the truth louder than their lies. He is lifting your name and clearing your reputation in a way that no man, no rumor, no weapon formed against you can stop. He is silencing every tongue that rose against you, not just for your sake, but for his name's sake, because when they came for you, they were really coming for him. And he does not allow mockery of his glory to go unanswered. So stand tall, hold your peace, because the same God who stayed silent while they tore you down is now the God who is speaking louder than ever. And when God speaks, no light can survive, for this is severe karma and divine justice. What's happening in their lives right now is not just a series of unfortunate events. It's not bad timing, not random chaos, and certainly not mere coincidence. What they're walking through is the weight of divine justice, a holy response to unholy behavior. The collapse they're experiencing is a direct result of seeds they never thought would grow. But now the harvest is here, and it's bitter. They mocked you, underestimated you, gossip about you, read. He killed your faith and disrespected the presence of God on your life. They laughed while you were weeping. They celebrated when he was struggling, and they did it without fear, as if God wasn't watching. But he was, and while they danced in arrogance, God was preparing a judgment so exact, so complete, that nothing in their lives would remain untouched. This isn't about revenge. God doesn't operate from vengeance the way man does. This is about spiritual order being restored. It's about a holy God stepping in to say you've gone too far. For every tear you cried in silence, there is now a storm in their life. For every attack you absorbed without retaliation, there is now a divine blow being delivered from heaven itself. This is not karma in the way the world defines it. This is justice from a righteous judge who balances the scales at the appointed time. They sowed dishonor, and now they're reaping exposure. They sowed pride, and now they're harvesting public humiliation. They sowed cruelty into your life, and now they're watching their own lives unravel with no one left to blame. And the worst part, they know exactly why it's happening deep down in places they won't admit. They remember the moment the shift began. It was when you walked away. It was when you finally obeyed God and released them from your life. The favor that once shielded them through your intercession is gone. The light they once marked has now withdrawn, and in its absence, they're standing naked before the consequences they never prepared for you, or they're covering not because you are perfect, but because God had placed you there as a buffer between them and the judgment they were calling down upon themselves. They thought they were untouchable. They thought their position, their pride, their social circle could protect them. But none of that matters when heaven speaks, and heaven is speaking now. The unraveling is accelerating. Doors are closing. Opportunities are drying up. Their name, once spoken with admiration, now carries a bitter taste. And you haven't said a word. You haven't fought back. You've just kept walking in obedience. And that obedience is speaking louder than any argument ever could. This is what happens when you leave the battle in God's hands. He doesn't just respond, he restores. He doesn't just defend you, he exalts you. And he doesn't just expose them, he teaches them that touching one of his chosen ones always comes with a price. They thought they were mocking you, but they were mocking him. They laughed at your faith, but they were mocking his spirit. They tried to bring you down, but they were actually resisting his hat. Now the consequences are undeniable. That peace is gone. Their relationships are in ruin. Their health may even be declining. And yet you remain steady, blessed, protected, not because you wished this upon them, but because God is a God of justice. He allowed the humiliation to test your humility. He allowed the silence to measure your trust. And now he is allowing the judgment to reveal his righteousness. There is no escaping it. What they're going through now is not misfortune, it's accountability. The heavens are balancing what man thought could be controlled. The spiritual realm is correcting what pride tried to manipulate, and God is not finished. What you're witnessing is only the beginning of a process that will unfold until every word, every deed, every attack is answered not by your hand, but by his. Don't lower yourself, don't explain, don't entertain guilt. Stand still and watch what it looks like when divine justice shows up and speaks for those who were mocked, silenced, and misunderstood. 5. God is making them your footstool. There was something sacred and terrifying about the moment God decides to reveal who he's really been backing. For so long it looked like your enemies were winning. They had the upper hand. They had the attention, the approval, the applause. While you were in the wilderness, they were center stage. While you were praying through your pain, they were celebrating your loss. And yet you stayed quiet. You didn't retaliate. You didn't pluck their downfall. You trusted God. You wept in secret. You stayed obedient. When everything in your flesh wanted justice, you carried your cross. While they mocked your calling, for what they failed to see was that God was watching the whole time. And now he's responding not with whispers, but with demonstration, not in private, but in public. He's not just defending you, he's exalting you, and in doing so, he is placing your enemies under your feet. This isn't symbolic language. This is spiritual fulfillment. What they try to use to bury you is now becoming the very platform God is using to elevate you. What they laugh at is becoming the proof of your anointed, the ones who dragged your name through the dirt, and now watching God prepare a table for you right in front of them, not to humiliate them, but to vindicate you, not to shame them, but to honor what they tried to destroy, and in that process they are becoming your footstool. It's not about arrogance, it's not about dominance.